trying to
Is it too
figure
loud?
out where my comfort level is
Perfect.
right now.
Do you want to wear this? Can you wear it? If you're going to get up and stand or walk around the room? Thank you. Just put it.
All right, good evening, everyone. To honor the time of everyone as well as everyone who's joining online, we thank you for being part of our town hall discussion with the North Cluster Schools. And even if you're not part of the North, that's okay. This is open really to all our PSS stakeholders. So we are here tonight to engage in conversation with our Commissioner of Education in regards to the CNMI PSS budget that's being proposed. And before we do get started, we want to make sure that we sort of follow some norms. We ask that if you are a PSS employee or if you're here currently present physically in this room, that you not log into the Zoom link so that we can give our virtual space to those that are not present today, since we have a limited number. So again, if you're here physically in this room, we ask that you do not log in, okay? We also ask that you hold all questions till the end of the presentation. There will be a Q&A session, so feel free to write down your questions that you may have till that section or that portion of today's presentation or town hall discussion with you. And without further ado, we'd like to welcome everyone who's joining us virtually. We'd like to also welcome our State Board of Education student representative, Vinny Juan Kiribos-Soblat. Thank you for being here and also for representing your student stakeholders here in the Northern Cluster Schools. We also would like to welcome our PTA who are here as well, our community members and our staff for PSS who are joining us as well. Our school administrators, thank you for being here to show support. And we want to also thank our key management team who is here. If you may have any questions after this. But we want to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and pass
47
on
online.
the microphone
47
to
virtually.
our Commissioner of Education, Dr. Lawrence F. Camacho.
Buenas, Tiruami. Good evening to all of you, or good late afternoon, but early evening. It is just a pleasure really to come up here and join you and discuss with you a situation we have with our public school system. But I wanted to first greet you and thank you for your attendance and the warm support that hopefully you will continue to provide us in our public school system. I am Lawrence Camacho. I am the Commissioner of Education, and I am so proud and honored to lead the charge of advancing our school district. In the time that I've been here, it is just great to be working with wonderful professional and competent individuals across the central office over towards the schools who are running, the administrators who are running the 20 schools, the hundreds of teachers that we have in those classroom spaces, really taking care of our students and serving, all of us serving about 8,000 students. And I'll go to the numbers here real quick, but what I wanted to do is on all three islands be able to share with you where we are when it comes to our budget and what it would mean when our budget is finally signed into law, whatever that number may be. But it is not fair to just hold off and not communicate to the community. What's fair is that we present what we anticipate numbers to be and what it would look like for the school system. Otherwise, because at the end of the day, the folks who will be really impacted are the children that we have to ensure we continue to provide the quality education that we've been providing, that we've invested so much into time, energy, resources, funding, and all that across many years have really kind of brought us to this point right now where we are on the verge of even advancing it further. But if we don't get the necessary resources that we need, in my world, it's the budget that I have to function with, that we have to function with, we're going to see ourselves, taking a step back. And that's the one thing that we're trying to protect across the system is the quality that we currently have right now, this moment in time. Instead of advancing it, stepping back, I think is not good. And when it comes down to that point, then you need to know about it. And the more you know about it, the more you will be informed, and really kind of probably help to continue to support us and communicate across our islands to ensure that there's enough attention to continue to provide the best resourcing to public education here in the Commonwealth, because it is the future of our folks that we are invested in, or we need to continue to invest in. So thank you all for your attendance this evening. I'm really happy to see that a lot of our folks from the school district are here as well. We have leadership up here. To my right, I have Jonathan Ogden. He is currently acting as the finance director at the public school system. Really, involved with a lot of the numbers and crunching all the things that we need to crunch as we anticipate what numbers could be. So I'll start off by saying that I want to kind of bring this from a larger standpoint, a bigger picture, because we're looking at the entire district, not one particular school. We're looking at 20 schools, 10 Head Start centers, 1,300 plus, if my calculation is right, staffing, 8,000 plus students, with hundreds and hundreds of activities and various events that are happening across the entire spectrum of our school district. It is a very complex and large organization that we all have to have an appreciation for in order to understand where the numbers kind of like fall into. But the biggest part of our problem set right now happens to be this need, this budget of $49 million that we have submitted to the legislature. And what we hope for, at least because we know the economic conditions and the sacrifices that we're all making in the community, we're hoping for at least 40 of that 49 to be appropriated to us so that we can then continue to do all the initiatives that we need to do, even with the cost-cutting measures that we already have in place, because we have so much of that right now happening across the school district, just to protect the employees and the lifestyle that we all are really kind of enduring each and every day, right? To make sure, but at the end of the day, all that connects to what's happening in the classroom and even outside of the classroom space in the lives of our students when it comes to their educational opportunities. So I say all that to say that we're going to look at it from a larger standpoint because we're looking at the entire district. But this really narrows down to, for example, when we start talking about the lesser number that we also have been informed we might get, which is not the 49, not the 40 million, but maybe the 31.7. We're going to make it real, and we're going to show you what 31.7 can afford for us, because there's many things that it cannot afford as we protect the quality education that we currently have. So when it becomes real and personal to us is when we know that it's not going to impact. For example, we have principals that rely on teacher aides that are going to be impacted with that. That bit of that quality that's being provided there is probably not going to be there when we only have 31.7 to operate with. So that's my point this evening, is kind of make it real. But before going down into the budget, I wanted to show you and just report to you what we have right now. Presently, with the budget that we had received last year, and I'll tell you how we received it, how much we received, why was that number, and why we're at this position for this coming school year, or this coming fiscal year. So go to the first slide, please. I know, see, Ferdy has been flipping around slides as I was talking. I'll guide you through the slides, buddy. Just go to the first one. Okay, so there's a point to all this, right? The first. Okay, so I mentioned 8,000 students. We have 3,170 right now to our count. And registration, I think, continues on throughout the beginning of the school year. We opened our doors on the 19th of August for our students to come be received by the teachers who came on the 12th of August. This is what it's looking like as of today when parents start registering their students and students are starting to come. 3,170 students in the elementary level, and then in the middle school we have 1,704 students with 2,800 across just the high schools on Saipan, and then in TDN we have 224 between the middle and the high school there because they're a combined campus, as well as the junior, senior high school there in Rhoda with a combined campus at 194. So current count as of today is 8,092 students. Then I want to also kind of give you an appreciation for, because we are responsible for the Head Start here in the CNMI. We have 331 students in the Head Start with early Head Start, which means that before they become pre-kindergarten in the Head Start, we also have centers for that age group, and we have 47 of them, so we have 378 all total within the smaller pre-kindergarten level. When it comes to our staffing, we have 1,276 individuals that work in PSS right now as of our last count. 972 of them are locally funded. That's what the appropriation is going to go to, that we will receive from our local government. The rest of the 304 employees are funded by federally funded grants and opportunities, like the special education teachers, the child nutrition program staff, Head Start staff, and all that. Okay? Next slide. Okay, so now I would like to give you an appreciation for where we are today when it comes to our student achievement, because that's really all we're after for the most part, right? Our core mission in public school is the academic enterprise. And what does that mean, the academic enterprise? It means successful students, students that thrive, students that will be prepared for their adult life. As we enter them into our public schools, we want to make sure that they're achieving. And how we see that they're achieving is we measure not just by their grades on their report cards, on all the various subjects that they take, but in a district level assessment test that the schools administer. We want to measure and see how we compare to national standards, because we want to make sure that our literacy level is also at the point where we need it to be, right? And so we don't just necessarily teach and then forget about it. We teach and we make sure that we're doing the right, providing it and doing it the right way. And how you know that you're doing it the right way is really kind of measuring. And there's a lot more to just what I'm showing you that are happening in the classroom between the principal, the interaction with that principal, and the teachers, and the interaction of the teachers and the students. Really, if you're there each and every day, you're going to have an appreciation for really the hard work that happens down in the schools. And that's the passion that we all as educators have across our public school system. And in that passion, we find fever to make sure that we provide. And if we don't have that resourcing to continue to provide that, I'm afraid that passion is going to diminish in a way. It will be maintained because we have wonderful, professional, competent human beings that are operating, but just the resourcing to make sure that they're much more successful in what they do is what I'm afraid we're going to lose out on, right? So when it comes to that. So can flip slide. If you look at, and we highlighted grade 8, the folks who were 8th graders, the cohort who were 8th graders in 2021, who are currently senior or who are seniors in 2025 school year. They were in reading. This is just the reading assessment, right? 40% of them were proficient at a proficient level at the grade of 8th grade, right? So they were 40% of them were able to read at the 8th grade level. And then they went down for some reason because of the COVID or whatnot, because there's that loss of learning. And then came back up at 39 in 2023. 2024, they jumped right into what that means is that we, the teachers, the educators, had that cohort, that same group who were 8th graders with a 40% proficiency in 2021. Now when they became, was it 8, 9, 10th grade, they've improved up to 39, and then in the 11th grade, they jumped to 57. That means we had made that, they made up for a lot of their loss of learning. We made them, sometimes something happened to make them make up for that loss of learning. So now they're performing at 57, and then even better news, compared to the year before and this last school year, they were performing at 75. That's a very successful story in a way where they start low, but then they are making up. That's the quality education that I believe we're currently providing that we need to protect. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me it makes a lot of sense. That if you see the performance of our students, it really can be attributed back to the performance of our teachers that we need to protect, the folks who work around those students. And then I'll give credit to the parents as well for really kind of caring about the education of your children, and really making sure that you're properly engaged with us, and that we are opening our doors as well to be engaged more with you as the time goes on. So I want to kind of just share that real quick. Next slide. And then on the math, it kind of tells the same story, 72%. Those two areas of measure with the subject areas and what we've been communicating with the principals is, besides these two measures, you need to also make sure that it connects to the grades that they're having, that they're achieving or they're getting in the classroom space. It is just wonderful to know that across our district, in every school, the teachers, you can tell how much they value their time and energy, how much they put into the students in making sure that they're provided the best. And I know that because we've had conversations with each and every school, and we listen, and we want to hear from the teachers and also even the students. We've even heard from the parents. We've been doing surveys with parents. So we're looking at all the statistics, because those numbers don't lie. But we're able to at least tell the story on why we need to ensure we continue to get the funding that we need at the end of the day, because if we don't, that's going to go backwards. And I'll tell you where it really kind of would impact when it starts going backwards. Next slide. So, in 2024, we had a budget of 24.7. We were going to get a budget of 24.7 again last year for this current fiscal year that is about to end at the end of this month. We worked with the late Governor Palacios, and he got us up to 33.4. But we were okay with 33.4, or at least I was okay with 33.4, because we have $12 million. We had $12 million in ARPA money as a residual from the pandemic funding that PSS was receiving, and we were allowed to use that to add on to that. And over the years, even before last year when we were negotiating this, coming up to a compromise, we knew, and I reported to the legislature, that PSS had been supplemented with a lot of funding by the federal government, and it was just supplementing it because of the economy situation that we caught ourselves in. So that's why that number is. But now we have to come back to reality, and I did tell the legislature last year, along with the central government, that we had $12 million last year for this year, but we're not going to have that same $12 million for next year. And so we came in with a bigger number, asking a larger number, and that's why you see that there. So we requested that. There's conversations with folks in the legislature that it could go down to as worse as 31.7. If we're asking for 49 and you're giving us 31.7, I'll tell you what we're not going to provide in the next few slides. So what we've been doing is we've been trying to squeeze every bit of our lemon, if you will, or what we have to see what 31.7 can afford for us. But I'll tell you what it will not afford as well. So critical priorities while minimizing the impact. So we've done everything we can. We've done some analysis, but if you look at just the 80-hour pay period per employee, 72 and then 64. We've been looking at the numbers. Just as school personnel to stay at 80 hours, to fund the personnel that we currently have at 80 hours, we're looking at $41.1 million just for personnel. And then for school operations, that means that's the money that we give per enrollment of each school. We're budgeting, remember these are not actual dollars in the way where it's real money, but it's budgeting, like how much are we going to budget for when we get the appropriations, right? Hoping that we get all of that in allotment every month. But we're also budgeting $1 million for school operations. All other programs, that's the matching funds that we have that provide us our local funds for the grants that we get from federal government. And many other things that go on to that 1.9. And then the administration, the administration means the folks, the offices that we have in central office, right? We were budgeting all of them to get $210,000 for the year, and now we're going down to $150,000. What we've looked at was like an office would have been getting $25,000 in previous years, and then last year we cut them down to $15,000, and maybe this year with that type of budget, they're only going to get $5,000 to fund the operation of that office from the local funding. Structural materials, $317,000 is because if we have $31.7 million as appropriation, there's a law here locally that says for every time you get your appropriation, you have to reserve 1% of that for instructional materials, like to buy books or to develop books, right, textbooks and all of that type of stuff. And so we're using that with a lot of effort in making sure that we're place-based type learning is happening here too. But what that means is it's 317. We have to kind of put that to the side because that's law, and make sure that we can afford that. And then 1.9 utilities. We previous years we've been budgeting $3 million for utilities. We were able to go down to 1.9 because we've installed solar panels, or we allowed a company to install solar panels in our 19 school campuses, and we're saving about $1 million from that transaction with the solar energy that we're getting to provide energy to the schools. And so we can budget at least down to 1.9 when it comes to utilities. Debt service contracts and all the other things that are going on is about 674, and then we decided to defer maintenance again this year with that type of budget if we were going to get 31.7. We were going to allocate $500,000 as part of the ask of the 49 that we submitted. And CIP means the capital improvement projects, the infrastructure that we have ongoing. But the good news when it comes to that is that there's a lot of other projects that are ongoing right now based on the disasters that we've had in the past that are being funded with FEMA and all the other federally granted opportunities to repair our schools. So we're okay on the big side of that. Now what we need to have money for is really the unexpected, the on-schedule type maintenance that schools will be calling up for each and every day. And so we're very careful when it comes to that, but bear in mind for the most part, and I put down in my notes here, that our facilities and our school campuses are really at the level they need to be, at least for now. And in so many areas, we need to continue to work and make sure that they continue to be better. But what we can't do is continue to defer maintenance, right? I'll stop talking for a minute and I'll let John kind of explain this slide here real quick.
All right, so thank you, Commissioner. We looked at those numbers, right, as the Commissioner mentioned. We could see how much does it cost for PSS to operate at the 80-hour, that's 10 days of work every pay period. And we could see, looking at the numbers, you could see the row that says operations total, operating at full 80-hour work week or pay period. It'll cost PSS $47 million with some reductions in place. That is not meeting the 31.7 anticipated budget that we're looking at. So we look down at 64 hours. How much does it cost for PSS to run at a 64-hour work schedule per pay period? We saw that it'll cost the system $37 million to operate. That means there are 2 days in every pay period that is a non-working day. And that does not match the expected budget of 31.7. So what we need to do then is to see how we can meet that $5 million shortfall to have PSS operate.
Okay, next slide. So with 31.7, and I'm not here to scare everybody with like 31.7. That's just because I asked what is the lowest number that the government is going to give to the public school system. And through conversations, that was what was announced, was 31.7. So I said, we have to go down to the worst case scenario and figure out how to survive with that number. Even though we asked for 49, we were submitted for actually central government, the late Governor Palacios, even supported by the current administration right now, would continue to see what they can do to support us with $40 million, not 31.7. And that's great and wonderful. We're hoping for 40. It's a good start. I don't think we can negotiate any further than that. We can negotiate up to 25% that were mandated, which would be 44 based on the projection of the government, 44 million. But we can live on with 44 because they have a way to, according to the conversations, to get us up to 44 to that 25%. But when you say 31.7, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and figure out how to do that and make that fit into our operations. And it's going to involve all this. It's hard to see the first there, but it says certification and licensure adjustment free. So every time our teachers, and you know, I failed to mention this earlier, we have high quality teachers in our classroom space. We have very limited number of not high quality teachers. But high quality teachers means that they're certified more than ever to be able to really perform at a high level in the classroom space. When they get their certification, what we go do is we go back and we adjust their salary and we give them an increase because they made that. It's an incentive to continue to get that quality certification so that they can provide the quality learning in the classroom space, right? That's how you incentivize. But that incentive is going to have to go away. It's costing us about $800,000 every year for that. And I love that they're getting certified, but there's no budget for that. Or there will not be with 31.7. So that's why it says adjustment freeze. Energy conservation for utility cost reduction. I told you we will live with 1.9. We budget 1.9. We've already been saving $1 million from the solar panels that we have installed. But we're even going to go back in and tell all of ourselves to turn off the AC 4 hours a day maybe. And so we're going to have to do that. We're going to calculate how much that would be. And I think we've done some calculations already on what that would look like. No budget for major repairs capital. I explained to you about CIP there earlier. 64-hour work schedule. That's a 20% cut in everybody's salary, right? And pay. And that's going to go across the board. Reduce school and central office operational budget. I mentioned to you, it's going to go from 25, 15, now possibly $5,000 for one school year. Central office admin staff furloughs, so we're going to have to let go some folks from central office. That's where it's going to start from too, by the way. It's going to start from there when we start doing, if we get to that point where we're going to do furloughs, it's going to start from there. Non-high qualified teacher and counselor furloughs. Thus, remember I said that we have a limited of non-high quality, but we have mostly majority high quality. So before we let the high quality ones go, we were talking about this. And I have these conversations with the principals about all this. And then even if we get to the point where we're going to merge schools and even to get more cuts across the board, vice principals will probably be let go. That's how much it's going to hurt. And as much as I don't want to continue to announce that, I'm going to have to remind ourselves that that's going to be the reality we're going to find ourselves in the next fiscal year if we only get 31.7. Okay, I'll let John talk here.
So we mentioned the 64-hour work week. What would that look like? We have identified effective October 1st, if we have that $31.7 million budget, that every Monday will be an austerity Monday. That means no school for students and no work for staff. Employee hours will be reduced to 64 hours, and this will apply across the board among local and federal positions. And we will see, the calendar has already been drafted to reflect this. In the event that we have to use it, it'll reduce instructional days from 180 days to 150 days, starting October, and intercession days will also be eliminated.
I'll talk a little bit about that.
Let me explain a little bit about the instructional day reduction there, instructional days reduction there. By law, PSS is to provide 180 instructional days. I mean, it's 180 days in the calendar year, or in the school year, we're supposed to provide instructions, right? Those are when we bring our kids to school, right? And we send them home afterwards. Those days count up to 180. With a low budget as low as 31.7, we're gonna have to reduce that down to 150. We would break the law if we do so. So what will happen is the governor has to declare a state of emergency. Can you imagine a state of emergency being declared, 64 hours for employees across PSS, and 150 instructional days for our students? And I'll show you what it will affect even further, what it will further impact, accreditation and all the other things, right? But again, how can we, it's not fair for us to not tell you this now. It's only fair for us to inform you of this, because this is hopefully not the reality that we'll face on October 1st, but it could be one of the realities based on conversations that we've had with the folks that are responsible for making that decision of what PSS will get.
This will give you a glimpse of what the calendar will look like. So we'll move, if we need to implement the 64-hour schedule, we will have the calendar reflect every Monday as an austerity day. So the commissioner mentioned that we will see a reduction in operational budgets for both schools and central office. And after looking at the numbers, we saw that we could reduce school operations by about 35%. Also keeping in mind, like, urgent needs at the school, things that we need to pay for, such as cleaning, sanitation, and urgent repairs that must be made to keep schools safe. And at central office, reducing down up to 50%, as the commissioner mentioned, so that we can run as lean as possible. And to summarize the furloughs, as our commissioner mentioned, looking at how that impacts the budget. So we have a line item, how much that will help save to make that $31.7 million budget work. So looking at central office admin staff furlough, that will save the system about $200,000. Substitute teachers will be impacted as well.
Before John continues on down the line here, I just want to kind of educate our folks about central office admin staff furlough. Because there's a lot of misperception perhaps, or perceptions out there that, oh, central office is bloated, it's this big castle that's up there on the hill, and it just, it spends a lot of money, right? I'll tell you right now, the little bit of staff that we have in central office really report to the finance office, the procurement office, the personnel office, right, which is HR, and then a little bit of my office, and some others. Where you see the big numbers come from when you look at central office are the federally funded employees that are there to provide and ensure that the grant is fulfilled with its objectives that we've proposed. So just want to make sure there's clarity on that. It's just not a lot of folks out there sitting around and trying to and telling the schools what to do. Really, we're working with the schools and we're providing the schools the best support from the central office level. And that's just like any organization you have. But I want to kind of clarify that it is not this bloated thing that people perceive it to be. It is, there's a lot of employees there, for sure. But a lot of them are fairly funded for the fact that they need to make sure that the grants continue to operate. And then a lot of them actually work, and oh, by the way, OPT, the Office of Pupil Transportation, the bus drivers are counted as part of that central office staffing. We need to continue to get the buses running, or else we won't have our kids make it to school or back home from school. So just want to kind of bring some clarity to that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. So looking at the other line items that we have calculated, furloughing the substitute teachers would save the system $1.3 million. The non-highly qualified teachers and counselors, about $1.2. Vice principals would save $1.1 million. And also the school support staff. So this is like the office staff, secretaries, administrative officers. We're exempting the custodial and maintenance staff at this time because they're essential for operations. And that'll save the system about $1.2 million.
Next slide. The next one, one more.
There you go, sorry about that. So going through those line items again. So those are the furloughs that we've calculated, and we found that it is insufficient, so we went even further to see what else can we do. We cannot just start letting go all the teachers. So we looked at the possibility of school merger. We looked at the enrollment numbers for our schools, and we've seen that some of the middle schools are well under enrollment versus capacity. So we saw, we created a scenario if Hopwood Middle School were to absorb Francisco M Middle School, Sablan Middle School, and merging Chacha Ocean View Middle School with Tinapag, with Chacha absorbing Tinapag Middle School, and as well as furloughing DAOC staff as well from DAOC Academy. It'll save the system about $700,000. And the reason why it's not greater is because there are staff in these schools that are impacted by the other line items, such as the school support staff and anyone who is not highly qualified and substitute teachers. So looking at all of these scenarios as we've developed for the furloughs, it will save the system about $5.8 million. And that figure is key in our calculation because, as we saw earlier in one of our slides, it costs the system $37 million to operate at a 64-hour level. And this is only locally funded employees. With the shortfall of $5.3 million with that 31.7 budget, with all of our cost-cutting measures that we've crunched, it'll save the system $5.8 million to make that 31.7 budget work.
John is speaking like a good finance director because he keeps talking about savings. We're not saving anything, it's hurting us, right? And I love John because he finds ways to inform us that this is where we're going to make the cuts from, and this is where, he calls it savings, I just call it hurting, right? This is where we're going to be hurting from, right?
Yeah.
That standpoint. So different views on that, but yeah, for sure, you know, whether we bring $500,000 back is a different story, but I want to kind of inform you that that's not. Go to the next slide, please. The impacts on reductions, larger class sizes, right? So classroom spaces will now be maxed, you know, to its fullest. Maybe even larger, and hopefully we don't go past the policy that the board had put in place, which is one teacher or 25 students for one teacher. Diminished capacity for instructional support. You can imagine that as well. As I mentioned, it's going to be real. It's going to, you know, we're going to try and make it personal to you and I to be able to kind of realize this is going to happen. Counseling and administration, all the things, again, that we've been investing in so much on, is going to start to diminish. Staff stress, burnouts, of course, because now there's more to do with less, right? And then delays in services or reduced efficiency. And we're working towards being more efficient. Turnaround time for maintenance and all of that is we're measuring to make sure that we're providing the best support for our schools. And we've reached the point where that level is, becoming much more improved. And then here we are, we're going to go backwards now because there's going to be delays because we won't have the staffing. Because that's where the money would have gone to. Possible risk for accreditation, and that's the last thing we put in there because there is possibility for risking our accreditation with all the schools. And it's sad to know that it's because of our economic condition, right? I mean, there's a lot of effort that needs to be made when it comes to that. But, as I told the legislature, they have a tough job too. They have a tough job to try to fund the entire government with so little. But at the end of the day, I remind them that the folks who were, is it the last slide? The folks who were invested in them when they were little, when they were students, were sitting there that were making those decisions to fund PSS. Now it's their turn. They've grown to be the policymakers, the lawmakers, and they're the body now. And I'm not saying it's just them, it's all of us, right? We have to work together. But they're the ones who are at the end of the day going to say what the numbers are going to be. But we were invested to be in the position where we are today because of the wonderful vision that our forefathers who were sitting in these positions wanted to have for us. We've made it now. We have to now think about those that are going to be like us when they grow up, and they're going to make those hard decisions as well. Because I'll tell you right now, the products that we're producing, the graduates that we're producing out of our public school system are really great problem solvers. They're really great leaders that are becoming, and they're going to start designing where the direction of this Commonwealth is going to be. So those are the three. I would say those three things because that kind of drives me, the energy that I have to make sure that we take care of our students and the teachers and the educators who are guiding those students. We have to take care of all of them. Okay, so again, it's, you always hear us say students first, educators always. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We have to put our hearts to that. Right, Donna? Hard work. Difficult measures are made to safeguard core instructional programs and preserve learning integrity. Of course, we just showed you what those difficult measures are going to be. And then we get good guidance from the board, and your community advocacy would really help us perhaps, realize a much greater outcome than what we are also foreseeing in a different scenario, as I just explained. So we have frequently asked questions. We'll probably have more frequently asked questions later on, but right now we have 3. The federal funds that we get through those grants that we receive cannot supplant and really cannot take over what we cannot get from, or what we would not get from the local government. Does that make sense? So we can't take all those federal dollars and say, hey, don't spend it on these things that we said we were going to spend it on, that we've agreed on with our federal grantors, right? And start putting it here, where I just told you we're going to lose out on. That's against the law, to be honest with you. So that's one. This is not an allowable expense under our grants, right? So we cannot use our grants to pay for all these expenses that I just told you are going to be cut. Would 64-hour schedule only affect locally funded positions? We're going to make it fair across the board and all employees of PSS, all 1,200 and lost. My memory's not good, but 1,200 plus will feel the same effect when it comes to hours reduction. Austerity measure, does austerity affect central office? Yes, central office employees are also, they're going to be the first ones to be affected and impacted. And I'm not, saying that in a funny fashion, but it's just, we have to know where the sacrifices and prioritize where those sacrifices are going to come from. I love all of us, all 1,200 of us, but we're going to have to make the tough choices and decisions. Okay. We've talked too much, I think, this evening. Just wanted to bring a lot of clarity, at least from my world to your world, and see where you also have questions, and maybe we can work around those questions and provide some answers for you.
So we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for some questions from our audience, from you, our stakeholders. So raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment or have a question, and when you do, please state your name, and I'll come your way.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jeremiah Rother. I'm a classroom teacher at Marianas High School, but I wasn't going to be able to make my clusters town hall meeting, so I came to this one. So a couple of times you mentioned here instances where PSS needs to be in compliance with the law, right? The 180 school days, or the 1% allotment for textbooks and materials. I mean, doesn't the central government need to be in compliance with the law and give us give the system, give the students, right? $44 million that would constitute like 25% of turnover revenue. And the Supreme Court weighed in on this. I know that the commissioner's office, the commissioner does not need board action to move forward with a lawsuit against the central government. Why isn't this happening yet?
I try to work my way through when it comes to those type of things with our Board of Education, but and you're right. Actions could be taken with or without, but still, actions are better when they're in conjunction with the board. The way I see those things, and I've had this discussion with the board last year when we were going through this, and I asked our legal counsel, what if we file right now for 25%? What happens tomorrow that I have to answer to the community? Because I don't believe that the government has a 25% straight off the bat to give PSS. It may, right, through law, but it's going to take more than just stopping everything and then giving PSS the 25. So we calculate more than beyond just what the law says, to be honest with you, when it comes to really making that decision. So I would rather work with the central government to give us as much as we can, possibly as much as they can afford for us to be able to survive with that. I'm not trying to champion really just going to court and then, they don't have 25%, because when I asked our legal counsel, they said, well, it could take 2 years before a decision is made, or whatever the case may be. Who knows? I'm not a judge or an expert in the law when it comes to, what the justice would do. So I fear that 25% lawsuit, and then the central government says, okay, we're going to just freeze everything until the decision is made by the courts. That's going to even hinder us further backwards. So I'd rather work together to get us the more funding that we could possibly get that can be afforded, than rather to go after something that I don't think is going to be realistic. So that's just my position. I hope I answered some of your question. And we're not going to solve this tonight, but we will. I'm always open to hearing the voices of our teachers and everybody to get better advice so that we can make the best decision from our standpoint. But thank you. I appreciate the question. Good question, too. And this is probably not the first that I've had this conversation with our teachers, right? We continuously have this conversation, so it's an ongoing thing, and we'll continue to work together. No?
I am James. I'm just answering grad for the students. This is not the first time we have these austerity measures. You know, maybe we should come up with something in case we're not have this situation again, because we know the situation with our economy, maybe the big beautiful bill and all that. So, like they always say, you have a question, come with a solution. I know there's a lot of rich people in America or around the world that they give out grants. So if we check with our legal counsels, if it's okay to apply for those grants that rich people are providing for students, if we can apply that. Secondly, you're gonna have Mondays off because of the 64 hours. Maybe we can, because the community will support the kids, we're resilient. Maybe we can do a fundraising for those weekend or Mondays, you know, for maybe each school. So whatever they need, supplies, the shortfalls, maybe because of the fundraising. PTA is a non-profit organization. Our legal counsels can provide us with those answers. We need to look for something instead of just doing nothing, you know, because this is not the first time. You know. Thank you that you guys came and we did this, because in the past, they didn't do this. We just phone our kids and parents and teachers, and we know how they feel, especially teachers that are going to be furloughed, most especially our kids that are going to lose educational time.
Thank you for that question. I love the idea of the nonprofit grants, foundations, right? Like the Gates Foundation and all, Bill Gates Foundation. I think all those are great, wonderful things for us to look into. And then creatively coming up with what to do on those Mondays with fundraising opportunities. So thank you. We'll continue to take notes and love to hear ideas. But I appreciate the suggestions.
Good evening. My name is Grace Napati. Thank you for being here. My question really is, well, I have a couple questions, but first one is I'm still trying to understand the reasoning for the 150 days versus the normal 180 days. To me, it feels like you're trying to force the government's hand to, I guess, take state of emergency. But it also feels like if you compress everything into 150 days, instruction, student, school merges. Yes, of course, there's going to be, the classrooms are going to be impacted. But wouldn't it be easier if you just spread out the days, right, with instructions, instead of shortening the days? Is it because maybe budget-wise, 150 days of maybe running the facilities is more, I guess, economical?
Yeah, well, it boils down to the salaries of our employees. I just showed you that if you have like a $49 million budget, you allocate 42 of that 49 to just personnel. And that counts for every hour that they work. I'm in tears. I'm sorry, the air conditioning is working really good over here. But it really kind of boils down to the number of hours that are, especially our teachers that are going to be teaching and are going to be working in those classroom space. They need the 8 hours and then 80 hours for a 2-week pay period. If you start reducing that down, that equates to how many days do they work and not work based on what you're going to be able to provide salaries for. I don't know if that makes sense, but to answer your question, it kind of boils down to, and I'm not trying to, the 180 is by law, but when you calculate how much a 64-hour teacher per pay period is going to be paid for, we're not going to, those teachers are not going to have 180 days to teach, they're going to have lesser because their hours are reduced. It's kind of like the equation there. Does that clarify a little bit?
Yes, thank you. And then my next question is, has there been, if it comes to the furloughs, right, has there been talks with Department of Labor to maybe soften the blow for employees?
To answer your question straight off the bat, I have not had talks with the Department of Labor. I will, just to get advice and see what we can do when it comes to that. But I wonder what you mean by soften the blow.
Celebrate unemployment, for example.
Okay.
Another program.
Okay. Thank you. Like a PUA type assistance.
No.
Thank you. Yes.
I can ask my question already?
Sure. Please.
Okay, my question is about, you mentioned about furlough of the teachers, non-qualified teacher, the vice principal, and some staff. When you furlough those things, I mean those people, what about you say you're gonna cut the 64-hour, 80 hour to 64. Those furlough is not gonna cover the 64 or 80 when you furlough them. It's not enough to pay those people that 80 hour cannot.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. We looked at first going to 64 for everybody, and then we knew that we still we would not have enough in order to even have 150 days of instructional, 150 instructional days. So we still had to cut even more beyond that. So that's the painful thing, is you're cutting down to 64 for everybody, but then you still need to get to furlough many of that everybody to continue to be able to afford operations. So to answer your question, really, the furloughs are in addition to the 64. They're not going to get the 64-hour pay, obviously, because they're going to be furloughed, if they are furloughed. Is that? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mina Benaventi, and I would like to make one suggestion before I ask my questions. I am an employee of PSS, so I understand the idea of locally and federally funded funds. I feel like for your future town meetings, it would be very beneficial for the public to understand the differences. I believe a lot of our community members do not know the difference and how the funds work. So I think taking a brief moment to really clarify exactly where the local funds goes would help clarify the confusion of PSS having all of this money. I've been receiving some feedback oh, PSS is rich, but people don't understand that there's designated money for certain allocations. So I think spending just a while clarifying that would definitely help the comprehension of the financial issue that we're in. Also, here's kind of where I vent, and this is where I ask my question. Furloughing VPs, support staff, and counselors. That means we are putting the entirety to the weight of our principals. And then what we're doing is we are putting a larger burden on our teachers and really creating a sense of an absence of sanity. And if we're going to declare a state of emergency, as a fellow PSS employee, I think choosing certain employees to be furloughed is completely unfair. I think we should just furlough everyone, because the amount of trauma that's going to be put onto every single PSS staff member, every child of PSS, every hardworking family who's trying to make ends meet, and every employee employee of the PSS just to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, the worst case scenario to me just isn't worth it. So if we're going to do a state of emergency, I believe, to be very fair to everyone in our community, the furlough should be across. And this is so painful because what PSS has become today is really beautiful. And the fact that we're potentially breaking it apart piece by piece, it's not a puzzle, we're a family, right? We just, furlough us all. The next question I have is, if we figure out a way to make it work this year, do we have a plan for next year?
Okay, thank you for the suggestions, the ideas, and the question. Yes, as I painted a picture in the beginning of all this, is this family that's working together, that's providing and meeting the intent and achieving the mission that it's set out for, that it's charged with. But therein lies the point and the position that I also have been trying to kind of not really want to paint, but I have to. I feel I'm obligated to paint this picture and say this is when it becomes real, is when we don't get the funding that we need. I'm not making that choice myself. I don't want to make that choice. We don't want to make any single individual. You ask our folks, and when we have our meetings and doing the analysis and crunch our numbers, how much I just don't want to, that would be the last thing we want to do. But when our hands are tied because based on the funding, because the problem is we don't generate revenue, we expect revenue, and to the point that our wonderful teacher back there mentioned, the Constitution, that's just the beautiful thing that our forefathers had drafted. Probably the best thing in that Constitution was to say that this public good shall be here, and in this public good it's going to be called public education, and it shall be funded. And when it's not funded, it's no good. Right now it's just an idea, and that idea is going to become real when we finally get an appropriation that is going to be signed into law. It's the reason why I'm communicating to you. I need help. We need help. We need you to advocate for us. We want you to be informed that this is how real it's going to be. Because evidently not a lot of folks really truly understand that if they continue to give us numbers that is not conducive to what we need. So that, and then forget the other one. But did you have questions? With regards to furloughing across the board or all that, yes, we're making every bit of analysis to see where it would start from, and we'll be having conversations. But when it comes to the vice principals, you see, it was kind of like one of the last things, right? Because we want to kind of do what we can, where we can, and then sometimes we just can't anymore, and we just have to do the thing that we don't want to do. You had your hand back up.
Yeah, so you said you need us to advocate. Explain how we can do that.
I'm more than willing. Give us an idea on how us advocating for this would look like. And I'm pretty sure, I'll be there.
Yeah, you communicate with the folks who are going to make that decision on what the appropriation for PSS is going to be. And the House of Representatives, they're a lawmaking body. They presented a course of action or a packet, right? A proposal to the Senate. The Senate is looking at it right now. It's reviewing it. Ask what the House. I know I've had conversations with the House, and they say, we really want to support you with your, the budget that you've requested for. At least up to 40 million is a good start. And we'll work with central government to get us to the 44. But and they decided that that's what they were going to present to the Senate. So let's talk to our senators now who have the task at hand. I'm going to be doing our budget hearing. It was supposed to be last week, but they moved it to September 9th to present to them our budget, just the way we presented to the House of Representatives. I told them the same things. We're going to be real with them, and we're going to tell them exactly what I'm telling you. that if that's going to be the case, then that's what's going to happen. So please, my ask of you is to communicate with them and find out from them what their thoughts are. Hopefully they're having these town hall meetings too, because times are hard. And when times are hard, we're not going to run away and try to brush the problem away. We're not going to brush this problem away. We're not going to wish it away. We're going to face it and we're going to confront it to how best we could do that. And that's what we're doing here, and that's the reason why. And I appreciate you guys coming out and joining us, and I hope that the subsequent town hall meetings are also, heavy with a lot of folks to give us ideas to kind of communicate and collaborate together and move forward with this. But the first thing we need to do is we need to communicate with you what it's going to look like. No? Thank you.
Buenas.
Keep doing a great job in the classroom, though. Visited your classroom so many times. So, buenas.
Any other government agencies being cut besides PSS? Sounds like PSS is the only sacrificial lamb here.
That's a good question, sir. Thank you so much for the question. But better question to ask the folks who are making the cuts, because I'm not making their cuts. I know what cuts we're going to be getting, so we're doing everything we can to prepare, at least from our world now. But if I hear some, I'll let you know. But there are other people who answer that question better than I could, because I just want to kind of, really kind of focus on ours. But as a community, I understand we need to know what the others right are, also because they're spending the taxpayer money, and you know what the priorities are as a community, and they also need to hear from you. So thank you.
Sorry, not to monopolize the mic. To kind of follow up here, right? Like this idea of like the central government not having the 25%, right? That's because they've made the decision to spend that money on other things, right? If the central government isn't making meaningful cuts in other areas, it doesn't seem reasonable that this should fall disproportionately on PSS. I think that if PSS is going to take a hit and be expected not to pursue legal remedies, like going after the constitutional 25%, then the government should come forward with the cuts that it's willing to make, and those cuts should be extremely aggressive. I also want to comment that PSS teachers, I don't think this is true of all the salaries of PSS, but PSS teachers have been on uninterrupted austerity since 2019, since August of 2019. There was some relief from those austerity measures for 3 years, and between 2021 and 2024, there was a retention incentive that was provided out of ARPA funds that mostly, from many teachers, made up for that shortfall. But all of us received less money in total last year than the previous 3 years. And I'm not aware of another government agency that has been on uninterrupted austerity for this period of time. I think the only reasonable way to make cuts moving forward is to cut 20%, to do a 20% work hour reduction and a 20% salary reduction from our pre-2019 cut pay scale. Because there was no work hour reduction that came with that austerity round in 2019. Right? Our contract, our NOPAs still indicate the austerity that's been in effect this entire time. I think that part of that needs to be sold to the community, to stakeholders, to the government, right? Is to reference that we've been in austerity. Right? This is compounding an existing austerity.
Yes, thank you for that, and I really appreciate the comment, the last bit of comment there that you had when it comes to informing the rest of our government about the sacrifices that our teachers and PSS have been making for the previous years. When it comes to the 25%, since you reverted back to that again, I think what we're trying to kind of work with the central government on is 40, because 44 million is 25% of what they're projecting to make next year. And if we can't reach 44, we would like to start at 40. That's why we asked the government to submit for 40 for us. So they did. They submitted for 40, and I had a meeting with the governor a couple weeks ago, and he's still committed. He and his budget folks are still committed to what we've agreed on, which is to start us off at 40. We continue to operate with 80, make it work, and then he will make up the 4 through other supplemental budgeting, so that, because he's fully aware, and even this current governor is fully aware of the 25%. So yeah, it's working in a way, even without going to court yet for that. But at the same time, evidently to some, it's not working, because we're hearing that worst case scenario is 31.7, which is way less than the 25, the 40 that we want to start with, right? And so my job is to make sure that everybody understands what that is going to look like as well. So thanks for that, and I appreciate the ideas and suggestions. We'll continue to work together.
Hi everyone, my name is Anastasia Menor. I'm a current junior at Kenman High School. So I've been following along with this whole presentation, right? And I've heard from the point of views of concerned parents, grandparents, and also teachers. But I think we also need to hear kind of the concern also from the students' point of view, right? One concern that I do have, right, with the whole situation, having like schools combine potential like furloughs of counselors, substitute teachers, is also the effect of students learning, because I'm hearing, right, a lot of students first. We also kind of need to take account of how the students learning throughout this whole journey is going to be affected. That'll just basically mean that it'll be kind of harder for students, right, who have different learning abilities, especially those who have more learn best with one-on-one contact with counselors or even teachers. How is that going to be affected with all these cuts of staff and also counselors who are very helpful to students actually with their whole learning journey? And I think we also need to kind of really think about that, because throughout this whole presentation I haven't kind of really heard the emphasis on how this is going to affect the students' learning, but also it's more on the budgeting and the costs. But you've said in some of your like you're presenting, right, students first, but we need to also think of that. So that's my main concern from a student's point of view.
Thank you so much. Let's give a big round of applause to our wonderful student here. Yes, ma'am. I'm just trying to paint a picture in the beginning that we're providing the quality education, and what we're trying to protect is that learning that you speak of. And that learning really is impacted by the amount of budgeting that we would get. It's the reason why I focused a lot on the numbers, but initially I wanted to kind of make sure everybody understood that from our perspective, that loss of learning is going to happen and occur because we're not going to have the same amount of teachers, the same amount of hours, and the same amount of instructional days, so for sure. And of course, accreditation is going to come in and start questioning what's going on with that. It's the reason why I'm just laying it all out on the table now to say that is just going to be real. And it's unavoidable when it comes to a signed budget of that amount of 31.7. So, but to your point about learning, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We really wanted to continue to hear from our students as well, because you're the ones who are going to be impacted. You're going to not have 180, you're going to have 150 days of coming to school and afforded that opportunity with less amount of days, and that's not fair, right, for you and for all of us who want to be investing in your education. So, but when it comes down to this moment in time, we have to be real about it. We have to say, yeah, this is where we're at. So we're at a crossroad, right? And in the crossroad, we have to look to our left, and something is coming really bad, and so we can't cross it yet. And then to the right, we have another thing that's coming that's really bad, and we can't cross the road, right? And crossing the road means advancing further, and means to continue to deliver for you. It means you'll still be in our transportation mode to deliver that wonderful education, and we can't. We're at that crossroad right now, and we're sort of stuck And it's not the doing of myself or anybody here, but it's just the situation we find ourselves in. So what do? The first thing we need to do is communicate. We have to make sure everybody understands where we are. And then from there, we develop solutions, or at least figure out how to work with what we would have, right? So thank you. Really appreciate your, one more round of applause to a wonderful student and all the students out there.
Commissioner, we do have a question from a participant online, George Cruz, GTC Elementary School PTA President. His question is the 33 million the final budget approved by the legislature, or is this still anticipated? I didn't see any reductions in after-school programs, extracurricular activities, or school sports programs. Will these be affected as well? Okay, so no, I'm not talking about 33, I'm talking about 31.7 because that's the lowest number I was given. The 33 that was shown there was what we currently have this year, but for next year, it sounds like we may, hopefully not, get 31.7. Hopefully we get 40 at least. But as far as the approval of the legislature and their signing of that bill, what I heard is that the House has presented to the Senate for us to get the central government to get a budget. And if you ask where we are as PSS in that proposal, it was at 40. But there's a possibility that, if the Senate says no to that, we want to go down to 31.7 for PSS, and that's what it's going to be. And so when I hear that that's just the conversation, that's an anticipation. So when we anticipate something, we have to do something about it. What was the other? Okay, I can answer the after-school programs. The beautiful thing we have going on in the public school system, we have a lot of federal funds, right, with a consolidated grant. And in the consolidated grant, a lot of the extracurricular activities or the co-curricular activities, the before and after school programs, and sports and all those things are funded through the consolidated grant, and not any single dollar of our local funds really kind of honestly go to that, those programs, because we're protecting those programs through the federally funded programs. A simple way of saying yes or no to whether or not it's going to be reduced is to say no, because they're federally funded, but because I said that all employees across the system will be affected if the hours go down, then there's going to be some diminishing of that as well when it comes down, even though they're federally funded. But we will still have, that's the beautiful thing, it's designed to supplement the ongoing learning. So when, as mentioned by our student, there's that learning loss, these programs, these extracurricular activities tend to kind of supplement so that the learning loss is reduced, is lesser than what is to be without the supplemental program on before and after school activities, right? Principals? So the principals come up with those ideas and they present it and then they get the funding for it. But it's great. That's why we are at this position right now. Quality, good, high impactful programs that are going on, the teaching's going on. That's why you see the proficiency rating that we have right now with our students performing at a high level. But all that's going to go to the left if we don't have the staffing for like what we have right now. And that's going to be real when we finally get the budget of a reduced budget, lesser than 40. Does that make sense? So. Another question, Commissioner, from a participant online, Vince Guerrero. Does it mean even SPED aides will be furloughed? We have so many students who need one-to-one services.
Yeah, we have our Director of Special Education here. She can answer in a more detailed fashion for that, to that question, but yeah, that's why it's going to be real. Tom, you want to?
Unfortunately, yes, everyone will be impacted. With special education, we follow what the state follows. So if the state has reduced learning days, we follow suit. We follow what the state or the school district does. Unfortunately, it will affect everybody, and I guess that's why the commissioner is imploring everybody to please help us maintain that level of funding that we need in order to operate, at least for this this upcoming budget year, it's very important that we get at least that minimum amount that he's requesting, just so our schools can operate and our kids can access learning. But we operate as the school district does.
Thank you for the response and to the question. I want to go back to the gentleman in the back, one of our teachers who talked about 25%. Before I forget, worked with the Board of Education, and the Board of Education established a ad hoc committee that has sanctioned that committee. The board has sanctioned that committee to look into the 25%. So we're seriously rolling up our sleeves and having this cordial conversation with the legislature, the central government as well, when it revolves around the 25% law. And we have a board member here who's also in the audience who actually went up and testified in front of the legislature, at least during public comments, to talk about the realities of where we are when it comes to that, and articulate really well. And I'm sure is a reason probably why the House has submitted a version of the packet to the Senate that really kind of gets us close to 25% at least. Did you want to add to that, or?
I'm just curious if the government, doesn't give us 25% and approves the budget with the cuts, how soon do you plan to implement your plan?
Yeah, we looked at various scenarios, and we looked at starting off. We even explored trying to just, and I'm going to probably confuse everybody here, but to answer your question first, straight off the bat, we're going to have to start on October 1st. And I did inform the board that we were trying to push it as best as we can to the right, to where we can gradually, make those cuts so that it's not a big cut and not a big pill to swallow right when we need to. But unfortunately, with 31.7, it's just hard to do so. It'd be nice if we could do, what I really wanted to do was 80 all the way up until the beginning of second quarter, and then go 72 hours, and then go 64 at the beginning of third quarter, if that's what. But even with the gradual reduction in hours, it's still not 31.7 is not going to get us there.
All right, so I do have some comments, and maybe it's not something that you could answer right now, but maybe something you can take back and to reflect. I think it was 2 questions ago, something about the extracurriculars, right? So this plan supposedly is supposed to have us go to school 150 out of the 180 days, right? I mean, 30 days is a lot, especially as a learner. I mean, one day in itself, missing 1 day of school. And I only have 2 classes, especially as a senior. Missing 1 day of school is crazy to me, right? I have so much to make up for. And you said that maybe the extracurricular activities can make up for that lost learning, and I would have to very respectfully disagree with that, right? I mean, I do va'a, I paddle, right? That's one of my extracurriculars. I do stuco, that's one of my extracurriculars. I don't necessarily see how paddling or working with my team is going to help my proficiency in language arts or math or social studies. And just to kind of echo what Anastasia back there was saying, I work with her at school. She's in stuco as well with me. Very great girl over there. When we look at budget cuts, more specifically diving into laying off employees, especially our counselors, our vice principals. I love my counselor, I love my vice principals at my school. They are amazing, right? How will you ensure that our students are meeting their college and career readiness standards, right? I mean, 30 days of missing school, that's 30 days less for me to study for AP exams. That's 30 days less for me to really dive into college applications and everything like that, right? I mean, it's a lot, right? So as students, we take so much comfort in our counselors to help us with all these things, our vice principals to help us with these things, and all of these other employees. And, you know, they give us a safe space. You know, they're people who guide us into the real world, you know. Like Ms. Mila Beneventi said there, putting that load onto the principals is just absolutely immense, and I don't think it's realistic at all, right? So, I mean, without them, who will be responsible for making sure that students are supported, you know, academically and emotionally, planning for our futures? I mean, long term, just those 30 days in and of itself and laying off all of these employees who support us as students is crazy, right? To me, I mean, it's long term, that's a loss that we're taking for the CNMI, right? If I'm not ready to go to college or I'm not ready to start working because of this shortfall, right? I mean, I could just imagine what it would be like for me in the future. I mean, you know, a little goes a really long way, and I think that we've all come to learn that as we've grown up, and I've come to learn that even though I'm just 17, you know, it's something that I know is a fact. And, you know, I think this risk is extremely existential. You know, getting to work with you, especially as the student rep and you're the commissioner, I've heard you talk a lot about a perfect portrait of a graduate. I mean, I also did a speech about a perfect portrait of a graduate at one of your trainings, I think 2 summers ago. And, you know, inevitably that portrait will be way more diminished than what it is, right? So I think that my question for you that you can go back and reflect on is, how is that portrait of a graduate going to look now, right? I mean, very inevitably, very obviously, it's going to be a lot more diminished than what it is today, and a lot more diminished than what you have come to kind of say it is. And so that's just something that I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much. I really appreciate the you know, collaboration and explanation that you have when it comes to that. But I'll ask myself some questions as I reflect. Do I know everything that you said is true, to be true? Yes. As a Commissioner of Education, head of the entire district, I totally understand. And I totally know exactly everything you're saying when it comes to the diminished learning of 30 days minus the 180. That's a lot. Do I want to do it? No. Of course I don't want to do it. Do I have to do it? Maybe I have to do it. Why? Because there are some folks in the community that don't know what we're talking about, that are going to make the hard decision of giving us or not giving us what we need. That's the predicament that we find ourselves in, right? Yes, of course, I understand all of that, and I don't want that perfect portrait of a graduate to be diminished in any way. But it will be. That's the reason why we're here, to tell everyone, to tell even myself, that it's going to be a reality if we don't get the budget that we're asking for, even at least 40, right? Don't have to give us 40 right now, because you cannot afford 44. Give us 40, so we can at least not diminish any more of our students' learning. But you give us 31.7, I just explained 31.7, what that's going to look like. But we, you know, and it's going to look like I'm the one who's going to make that decision. I have no other way of operating. We cannot operate with 31.7 the way we've been operating. It's a drastic cut across the board, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really painful. So we're going to digest it, and you know, as I mentioned earlier, imploring all of us to continue to communicate with the folks that are going to make that decision at the end of the day, right? So to our students, thank you so much really for bringing that up, because when you were talking, I was praying that not me, because I understand everything you're saying, others understand what you're saying and are actually hearing, not just this, you know, hearing it, but actually listening and actually understanding what you mean by what you just said there, because it was very meaningful. Because I know everything that you just said there, and I just really want to continue to have this quality education and not diminish it in any way. But it's going to be diminished if, again, we don't get at least $40 million, no? So, thank you. Big round of applause for Speaker of our Youth Congress and also a student representative at the Board of Education, and I'm sure a fine student at Katmai High School.
Adam Golden here, Cha-Cha parent. Really want to appreciate you for the community outreach, showing up, communicating, and letting us know what's going on and seeing how we can contribute. Briefly looking at this challenge myself, sometimes reference can give perspective. I was quite surprised that in the U.S., the average is 18,000 U.S. per student. You know, so, and I think California is the high side, which is 30. If we're looking at your 44, that's $5,500 US per student reference. So, really well done with the budget you've had to make all the results that you've done so far. So it kind of confused and surprised me when I look at this. And we're looking at 18,000 US, you're looking at 5,500, and the government is questioning their ethical responsibility and legal obligation of 25%. So I'm still kind of in a conundrum about this and looking and exploring this and seeing and listening how that can be handled and done when we look at that perspective.
Be confused no more. It is a terrible thing, right? And in this terrible situation we find ourselves in, we're going to do our best to make it work. That's my staff has told me this. Part of our biggest problem is really we're trying to always make it work, for everybody, right? And we will continue because that's our obligation. It's the educator nature in us that we're going to make things work to make sure that we're providing. But at the end of the day, others outside of the world we live in or operate in need to understand that we're sacrificing so much and that they need to kind of help us get what we need. No? So thank you.
Thank you.
But be confused no more. I'm just kidding.
Just because it's 7, we're going to go ahead and wrap up on questions, okay?
First of all, Commissioner, thank you for having this. This is very informative for parents, students, and staff. The one thing I want to ask is, what are we going to do differently? Every 5 years, we sit on the same table. We're going to furlough. We're going to cut students. The first time was, I believe it was Eddie Tenori who did the presentations at the school. And then COVID, we didn't, as educators, all we did was got a letter, sorry, thank you, you're furloughed. What can we do to help alleviate all these reductions on the school ends? Does it mean cutting more power? We'll do it. Does it mean doing the fundraisers in partnership with our parents? We'll do it. We'll continue to advocate, but I think what I want to see is more of like, what's our 5-year plan? How do we continue every year to cut power, to save on all these expenses, right? So that's just one of it. And when we talked about the 150 days of school, my heart broke. We are opening up a CTE building. We are doing all these certification classes. My son is a freshman at Cagman High, and we're talking about building this college resume and making him prepared. Can we do half-day Monday and every staff leave at 1 o'clock? And then let's play with the numbers like that, right? And then let's go back to the schools and say, hey, maybe we need to cut here and here and here. A lot of our students come to school as their safe haven, and we're going to take that away. I'm one of those vice principals that is in those scenarios. So I need my son to be in school so I can find one job and another job. We're going to advocate, we stand with you as parents and as your employees. Just tell us the how, and then we'll look at the plan, and then we'll go out and we'll figure what needs to be done with partnership with our parents. But like Benny Boy said, 150 days. They're already still working from the super typhoons, the pandemic. If you go in the classrooms and you hear the conversations of how many students are now taking leadership, and we minus those 30 days, we go backwards, right? And we want to go forward. We saw all our academic achievements growing, but you did see that dip when we went to online learning. So if we can please play with the numbers and do half-day Mondays, all staff get off at a certain time, and try to protect instructional time as much as we can. And you have great people at PSS who's willing to help you. Let's sit down together, let's figure out a 5-year plan on what more can we cut and where, so that we do students first, educators always. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Once again, do I know everything you're saying? Yes. Do I want to do any of it, one of it, our decisions? No. I hope and I pray that when you were talking that the folks outside of our community and the education world are actually listening, because that all makes sense, perfect sense. I think there was a hand back here because we're about to wrap things up. Who goes first, Laila? Okay.
Proud parent of KHS, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. My question is, since PSS do grants or write grants, where does the indirect cost go? Why don't we, one of my suggestions is, why don't PSS avail to that indirect cost? If it goes to Office of Grants, then maybe ask Grants Office to help with maybe maintaining the school, or because I know that's a big chunk of indirect costs that they pull from each federal grant.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. And to answer your question, we looked at indirect costs too. What we could afford to get out of it, unfortunately, is just a fraction of what we really need. The problem is greater than what we imagine it to be, but the solutions could be, and that's what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to take this solution that is not going to be making a big impact and trying to kind of add it to another solution to get a greater impact. And we're doing everything we can to squeeze what we can get out of that. But very good. We have some indirect costs that the grants have been kind of coming in for. The problem with that too is that we cannot necessarily just use it for personnel. That's where the big cost is in personnel when it comes to administration. But I'll look into that even further now that you mentioned it again. It's something that we've already kind of explored, but there's not a lot to put into the big problem, right? So that's just the reason why you don't see it up there listed, if you will. Okay? But thank you so much.
My name is Lee Titano. I'd like to just ask a few questions. So far, you showed us how much by law we're required by the feds for books and stuff, but you did not give us how much we spend for students, things that students use that are not books. And also, how much of that of our money to provide to private schools as we distribute federal funds to private schools, how much of those in-kind, not book costs are, how could we also save money by charging a quarter for a bus ride? I know it's difficult in the community, but sometimes if you spend 50 cents for your child to get on a bus back and forth, is it worth it for them to go to a school that works at the highest level possible than at a diminished scope because the government doesn't have enough money to pay locally for teacher salaries, and we're thinking of reducing school days to 150, and then having some magical formula for the rest of the 50 days instead of presenting various scenarios where everybody could understand. I would like to see a scenario for half days. The lady made a comment about half days only on Mondays. Does that mean when the teachers don't come in, do we reduce their salary for that? I didn't know what she was asking, really. I wanted to ask a point of clarification for that. The feds are not willing to support very much in education. I know that the U.S. is getting much more money than we do. That money goes out to places that vote for the president. We do not. We have a difficult time in asking for money from the feds. I would like to see, I'm not a parent, and I don't go to any of the schools, but I would like to see something that would give us more scenarios. For instance, if we're all going to tighten a belt, how about ways to address the legislature on cutting people who sit and might be paid for casino commission? commissioner, and the casino does not exist in any island. I'm not sure about Tinian. I think that the way for all of us, we can't force the legislature to cut everybody equally because we are the largest consumer. But we can do things like ask CUC, and I would like to ask have we asked CUC to put solar systems on all our schools? Or are we paying for that or applying singularly for that? We are part of the CNMI. The reason I'm saying this is we're just looking at money, and the students, both of them, brought out really good things. You're just looking at money, but how about us? How can we save in infrastructure and all the money that we owe CUC and all the percentages that they put on top of that, and all of us who pay private, our own CUC bill that includes the money that is owned by CHCC and PSS and people across the way. How do we look at the whole working of it, and how can you, Commissioner, sit down and give some kind of a formula for parents to lobby with the legislature in a way that would be collective and in a way that would actually be profitable? Profitable meaning in terms of education for our students.
Yes.
Can you do that, please?
Thank you so much for all that. Really appreciate it. As far as just so that we're all clear on the numbers there, that was all for local funds. So the local law, not the federal law, but the local law requires PSS to use the entire appropriation, 1% of it for instructional purposes. So none of that would go to the private schools, it would be just for the public school system, but that's coming out of our appropriation. So let's say we get appropriated 40 million, then 1% of that is going to be instructional, it's going to go to instructional services, right? Materials, instructional materials. So that's that. And then the other is, what was the last bit of? Solar panels. Yes, ma'am. We didn't have to ask CUC to install solar panels. We went on our own way, in our own terms, and actually negotiated with a company to install solar panels on our rooftops of all 19 campuses that we have in our system, in our district. And guess what? What we do is we buy the energy that's produced out of those solar panels. CUC's job was to come and actually turn the meters into net meters, so that when we get the energy from the solar panels, we utilize that during our Monday through Friday school days. And on the weekends when we're not using what we draw from that panel, CUC comes and sells it to us, the consumer, and then gives us credit back. And it's the reason why we can make $1 million a year. So that saving is already in place. We wish we could save some more. To the comment about turning off lights, yeah, that's going to come in addition to solar panels being installed on our, but that would only work even more with offices that don't have solar panels consuming energy from. So. And we're up to date on our payments to CUC. I'd like to hear from the Director of Finance here. Yeah. So yes, thank you all though for that. We have to close out. Sir, you have one more and then that's it. We also have an opportunity to be at Garapan Elementary School tomorrow, and then Cobler for the Southern Cluster. But it's all those town hall meetings are open for everybody. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, you said September 9th you're going to present the budget?
Yes, sir. That's on schedule right now, unless they change it again, but they changed it from last week to September 9th is the last word I got, so.
Thank you, and I hope we're going to encourage you, because you're the leader, to make it your legacy. You need to do something about this. Like what they said, like, this is gonna be repetitive. Make it your legacy to do something, for example, September 9, and they still cannot provide the budget you need. Outreach out to the private community, private schools, the church, and most especially the community, because we will support you, because this is for kids. You know, you have a lot of good staff that can help us do that fundraising. If that's the last solution, make a goal that we need to reach that 4 million, and we'll do fundraising and hold that event with all the support of the public and private sectors. Once we reach that goal, we'll use that money for the shortfall, and then continue throughout your tenure. And maybe there's going to be accounts, so in the future, when we encounter this, we have something to fall back, and everybody can thank you for being that leader, you know, because sometimes there's nothing you can do. Your hands are tied behind your back, but untangle it and do it for the children, do it for your staff, because the community has your back. I guarantee that.
Thank you so much. Can we give a big round of applause for that closing remarks, because we're all going to do it. We're all going to untie our PSS hands to go after it. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for being out here participating in this town hall meeting. Laila?
Commissioner, just for you to take back 2 comments online, Vince Guerrero just wanted to ask, what about a 30% cut all across the board and keep all employees in schools at 180 days? Would that make a viable option? So that's something they want you to look into. And last, PTA president from Tanapa Middle School, thank you for sharing this with the community. Have any of the scenarios included asynchronous learning to address the 180-day requirement? What savings could be foreseen? Example, less power consumption. Asynchronous does not necessarily have to mean online learning, which could mean added spending. So just something for us to consider.
Yeah, please keep that on record so we can put that in our calculations. I want to make a correction on the venue tomorrow. It's not Yarapan Elementary School. It's actually Mariana's High School cafeteria, where we're going to have our next town hall meeting. And yes, thank you so much. There was something that I wanted to say, but I totally forgot. But thank you. I really appreciate everyone's participation.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you to our staff who are out here supporting.
Thank you to our online participants as well.
Let's go, TJ. Let's go. Rep, can we talk to you? Sure. It's okay. Rep, any thoughts about, seems to be a PSS is saying that the legislature might dip the PSS's budget to 31.7 million from the 44 million they've asked. Any concerns and any reaction to the town hall today?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Commissioner and PSS for setting this up for our community. Yes, the 31 is a possibility, but as I would like to reiterate what the Commissioner said, it's our goal right now to at least get to the 40 million, and then obviously find out the other 4 throughout the year. Yeah, so that's our goal. But I just wanted to let the community know that we do hear you, especially for our students here. I'm a product of PSS. Of course, we support our students first, like you said, and obviously these are cuts that we don't want to make, but we are trying our best to find solutions, and I'm confident and hopeful that working with the Senate that we can at least get to that 40 million mark that is being requested from PSS right now.
Was that a hard call for the House to move up to 40 million?
Who wants to be first? Okay. Okay, Vinny, any thoughts about, you already said a handful a while ago, but any other thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, especially as a student representative, right, I think it was super important for me to be able to make it today, especially since this represents the cluster of schools that I kind of grew up into, right, GTC, Tinopeg, and then now in Cagman. And, I was listening to the commissioner talk about all of these plans and all of these proposed cuts. Of course, nothing is final, right? Today we just went through, I guess, the worst case scenario in his words of what would happen, I guess, because he was asking them, what's the least that they would get, and I think this is what they said, and he was just going through that scenario of, what would happen. Of course, this is not what they have been given in terms of the budget, but I think that his team is doing a very great job at being very transparent with the community. I think this town hall is one of many that he will continue to have, right? I mean, I do applaud him and his team, especially on the board perspective. I've seen him and his team really work incredibly hard, right, to make sure that they provide, the best education for my peers and I, especially all in the public school system. And so I'm just commending him for doing such a great job. I have no doubt that, whatever happens, he will come up with, a great plan that will, work for everybody, right? At the end of the day, if this is the reality, right, it's something that, we can't face, but it's a hardship that we will have to, right? And so I think that's the kind of reality that a lot of people have to take into account. And so those are my thoughts, and I just hope everybody has a good night. Yeah.
Any message to your fellow students and also to the lawmakers up in Capitol Hill?
I do work with the lawmakers, right, especially in Youth Congress. I'm the current speaker for the 20th Youth Congress, right? And so especially as a student rep, right, it's my job to make sure that I represent the students' voice. So something that I have been working on right now that I do plan on releasing sometime this week or next week is I do have, a plethora of surveys that I do plan on releasing sometime. I've been working just very general questions, right? What are some of the concerns that my peers and students have in the public school system across all three levels, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And I think that is where I can really take a deep dive into, what I think my peers need, what they say they need.